Take your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
We might end up needing some fun sound from Niko Medved post upset of Indiana on the floor at Williams Arena or Cambria Court at Williams Arena. Manny, storming the field when you beat a 4-7 football team, or storming the court when you beat a 7-0 top 25 basketball team? What is more preferable in your mind?
I think definitely what we saw at Williams Arena last night was much more appropriate. I think, yeah. Definitely.
I would agree with that. I'm not going to legislate and tell fans how to fan, but that feels a bit more appropriate. Back in our day, Manny, I don't even think you would storm the court for beating the 22nd ranked team in the country. Maybe if you hadn't won a game in a year or two, you might. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is double Gophers 101 because Thor and I, within a matter of hours, dropped one that was largely focusing on Gopher football. Well, since then, Manny, our Gopher basketball team with a win over a previously undefeated and top 25 ranked Indiana basketball team. A game that I wouldn't even say was much of a fluke. The Gophers competed all the way through, tied at half, end up winning the game by 9 points. Cade Tyson plays incredibly well. Isaac Asuma down the stretch, making most of his free throws, making big-time plays that I think many Gopher fans were hoping to see from him as his career developed at the University of Minnesota. Hat tip to Niko for being able to keep him after Ben Johnson departed the University of Minnesota. Manny, maybe I'm wrong here. Speaking for you, maybe we'll both be wrong. I still can't imagine there being a ton of Big Ten wins for this team this year. So why not celebrate it and talk about it? And oh, by the way, I'm okay if I'm wrong about that. But last night was a really good first step. And who knows, maybe we'll find out Indiana's not that great of a team. But in the moment, that's a heck of a win for Niko.
Yeah, no question about it. And yeah, I'm with you. I mean, maybe we find out, that Indiana has a first-year head coach, Darian DeVries, who came over there from after spending 1 year at West Virginia, which was kind of odd for him to. I mean, obviously the Indiana job is what it is, but to jump ship from West Virginia after 1 year is kind of an odd way to do things. But I get it. Indiana is still, one of the heritage programs of college basketball, historically speaking, and so when you get an opportunity to coach there, why not? Yeah, we might find out that they're not that good, but I think for now, a team like Indiana that's gotten off to a good start, undefeated going into the game last night, ranked 22nd in the country. I think you got to take your wins whenever you can, and I think especially coming off a few losses for the Gophers where, you were kind of wondering, is this team even going to win 6 or 7 games? Are they going to even win, more than a game or two in the Big Ten? Just based off of how, the Stanford game went, and obviously Santa Clara was a challenge for them this past Friday. But I think what last night showed is that, one, this team plays very hard, which is, I think, number one, what you want more than anything in a year like this. But also, if they can defend well enough, I think they're going to have a chance to at least compete in a lot of these games. So that was a good sign of what we saw last night. And who knows? I don't expect the win streak to exist beyond this one game as a week from yesterday, they're going to be taking on the number one team, or at least right now, the number one team in the country in Purdue. So that's going to be really tough for them next week. But I think for now, you take this win, you enjoy it. It's a good quality win, and you enjoy it for the next week and see what happens after that.
Yeah, and to your point, Manny, you have losses to San Francisco, pretty good program, Stanford up and down program, Santa Clara, and you competed well with Missouri for a half, maybe 2/3 of the game, and then ended up losing. So you sit here at 5-4 through 9 games. Can't predict the future, but very likely 5-5 about a week from now when you go to West Lafayette and take on, yes, right now the number one team in the country. But speaking of last night's game specifically, you go into a game with 9 scholarship players, 10 healthy bodies, and it's not like there's more coming on the way. You can't call up a player from Hamlin. You can't go get a player from Northern Iowa in the middle of the season. So what you have is kind of what you got. They may get a body back, but I think what will end up really hurting them down the road is that Chancey Willis Jr., he's done for the year with a broken foot. And that's going to affect you as the season goes on, whether he's a great player or not. However, Manny, it could also be a positive. It might force Isaac Asuma to step up even quicker and contribute more right now versus even next year in a junior season, which could be a good thing. He was pretty solid last night. And overall, the team across the board, Manny, getting contributions everywhere. It wasn't just Cade Tyson. You had multiple players in double figures, and that's going to have to be how this team competes and wins games. And to your thing about playing hard and defending, I'm not saying that Niko Medved is Ben Johnson. I think we all hope that he's better than Ben Johnson. No shade to Ben Johnson. But Ben Johnson's first year, he also had a team that was bought in and played really hard. And if Niko can get that, you saw it again last night, even at a barn. Andy Katz called it three-fourths full during the broadcast. I don't know where he got his degree. I would say maybe half full. Again, could be wrong.
A little bit of a math discrepancy there, I think, from Andy Katz.
I wasn't there, but just optically on TV, didn't look like it, but whatever. This program historically, even with quote unquote bad teams or teams at a disadvantage, historically can put up some fights at home. So I think you and I both settled around 5 wins preseason in Big Ten. Well, last night was a pretty good start to show that it's possible. I think the bulk of those wins are going to have to come at home. And to see that was very Minnesotan, by the way, come at home. I think to see that against Indiana is a good sign. And I think it's good to stop this thing from snowballing after the, debacle. Where'd we go? What was it? Were we at the Battle for Disney or something? I can't even remember where we were just at. But wherever Niko was doing post-game press conferences from the loading dock, that's where we were just at.
Yeah, I think that obviously you take any win that you can get. I think, especially in a season like this, I think you just have to really enjoy the W's however you get them. And to your point about, the balanced offensive attack, I think that's going to be huge. They've relied so much on Cade Tyson to carry the load offensively for them, and to kind of see a more balanced, and Cade had a pretty good game. He turned the ball over 5 times, which isn't ideal, but he had a pretty good game. 17 points, 5 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3. But when you look at, Langston Reynolds coming through with a 17-point game, you mentioned Isaac Asuma. They're going to need, Bobby Durkin coming through with 12 points in the game. So they're going to need everybody to be able to contribute. Obviously they're shorthanded, so the bench didn't really contribute a lot offensively. Niko couldn't really go to the bench that much. Grayson Grove led the reserves with just 8 minutes played in the game and scored the only point from your bench. So, they relied heavily on the starters to kind of carry the load offensively. But I think the fact that all 5 starters got into double figures and it was a balanced attack, it wasn't like Cade Tyson needed to go and score 30 points in the game last night for them to win. The fact that they only needed 17 from him, and then the other guys were able to kind of chip in offensively as well, I think was big. And, you and I were texting late in the game down the stretch, the Gophers had missed a couple of layups and they went to the free throw line and missed a couple of free throws. And that was always historically, that's always been a big complaint with Gopher basketball, right? Missing free throws and not being able to rebound the ball. I think the Gophers rebounded the ball pretty well last night. I think they out-rebounded, what I'm looking at the box score. Yeah, they out-rebounded Indiana 40-25. That's big. That's absolutely huge. So it's big. I mean, that's what you need to do. And they missed a couple of free throws late in the last couple of minutes, but overall in the second half, they shot their free throws really well. And I think that's going to be really important to keep them to be able to compete in a lot of these games going forward.
Well, in the football comparison, Manny, all year long with yourself and Thor, I brought up at the end of the game, you would look at some of these box scores and you would say, well, how did the football team win? And then if you did a deeper dive, you would see, well, they were the less penalized team and they won the turnover battle.
Yeah.
Tonight, the Gopher basketball team won the rebounding battle, and here's an all-time shocker. They were better at the free throw line than their opponent, 70% to 60%. And I want to go back to Cade Tyson and just, if this team is going to get to, I think, where you and I want it to be this year, just respectability, you flip the game on, aside from maybe playing the number one team in the country or perhaps being up against it at Michigan State, just feel like, they're going to compete tonight. There's a puncher's chance that they can win. Well, I think we know the roster is going to be limited for many reasons, but now even more limited due to injury with a couple players already out for the season. But they're going to have to find a way. Let's call it 5 wins, 6 wins, no matter what the number of wins is. It's probably going to have to look more like it did last night with 5 starters getting into double digits plus than the team scoring 70 points and Cade Tyson scores 34 of them. I'm not saying they're not going to win a game like that this year. They probably will win a game like that this year. But they're going to win more doing it with the, what does Niko like to say, team together? That's how they're going to have. His mantra for teams will probably be proven no more than it will have to be with this team, because I think we all expect year over year the roster is going to get better. But with what he has right now, they are going to need to win with all 5 starters on the floor, putting out great efforts and good numbers like they did against Indiana.
Yeah, and I think, listen, there's going to be a game this year where Cade Tyson just doesn't have it, where the shot's just not falling, and there's going to be there's going to be like a 5 for 17 type of shooting night for Cade Tyson at some point this season where he scores, maybe 12 or 13 points. And the biggest key, if the Gophers are still going to compete, despite that, somebody else is going to have to be able to pick up some of the slack, because for as talented as Cade Tyson is, he's not a perfect player. This was a guy that, didn't get a ton of playing time at North Carolina last year. And when he did, he didn't score a ton. Now he's in an opportunity, where he's kind of the focal point of the offense, and he's shown that he can go and get buckets and he can find ways to score, and that's good to have. But he's not a perfect player, and he's not going to score 20 to 30 points every single night. And the question is going to be, on the nights when he doesn't, who's going to be able to step up? Who else can Niko Medved, turn to that can knock down some shots and keep them competitive in these games? We saw it last night with, I thought Langston Reynolds was really, really good in the game. Just finding ways to score.
Best game of the season.
By
Not
far.
even close.
Yeah, by far. And I think that's a good sign that, hey, maybe he's now a guy that can really step up and pick up some of that slack if need be. And he's a senior. He's a guy that's got experience. He should be relied upon to be able to do some of that stuff as well. So that's going to be big. That's what I'm going to be looking for the rest of the season too, is just on the off nights for Cade Tyson, who else is going to be able to step up and pick up some of the slack?
We have talked a little bit about Gopher basketball. We were pretty honest that we would spend a lot more time on it once the Gopher football regular season was over, just so people know. Manny and I will hop on, talk Gopher basketball at least once a week, maybe twice a week when it warrants it. going forward. I don't think you and I will have a chance to talk until, well, maybe we'll get together after the bowl game for a quick podcast, but I don't think we'll talk Gopher basketball again until probably after the Purdue game. And based on how that goes, we may even wait a little bit. We'll see when we get there. I do want to ask you this, though, as we start to wrap up this quick-hitting celebratory edition of Gophers 101 with the Gophers beating the Hoosiers last night. A legitimate upset, beating an undefeated top 25 team at home, and you had limped into the game. So legitimate upset. Very happy for Niko Medved. Maybe we can get there in just moments. But one thing I do want to ask you, just to put it out on public record, I think you and I, just going back and forth via text and when we've been in person together and talked about this, I think we probably share the same opinion here, but I'd love to get your thoughts. I think pie in the sky, best case scenario for this basketball team, and I don't even think this is very obtainable, but I think pie in the sky would be at the end of the year, you're invited to that crown tournament that we just started. That is Big 10, Big 12, Big East. I'm not saying, I'm not positive, but I don't think the Big 10 will, I don't think they're really participating in the NIT unless they filled all the crown spots and then they put a team there. But I think best case scenario, Manny, and that's if everything goes really well, is this team participating in one of those tournaments. More realistically, from here on out, yeah, they get a couple more games, tune-up games, I guess, after the Purdue game. But at this point, we've seen them almost lose to Chicago State, almost lose to Green Bay, lose to San Francisco, lose to Santa Clara, lose to a not very good Stanford team. So I don't think any game's a given. More realistically, though, Manny, I think you're looking at a team that's, now I know they upset a top 25 team to get to 5-4. I don't know, overall 13, 14 wins. Does that seem fair to you? That's assuming they probably win 5 or 6 conference games.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. After the Purdue game next week, which I think you and I are both anticipating a loss there, number 1 team in the country, it's on the road. That's going to be really, really tough. You know, even though Gophers played really well last night, I think Purdue's kind of a different beast from Indiana. You know, then you've got 3 non-conference games that against teams, honestly, that I don't know a lot about. Texas Southern, Campbell, Fairleigh Dickinson. Now, remember, Fairleigh Dickinson was the team that was the, I think they became the second 16 seed ever to win in the NCAA tournament when they knocked out the aforementioned Purdue Boilermakers a few years ago in the first round. But I'm not sure this is that same Fairleigh Dickinson team that pulled that off a few years ago. But, you know, that's going to be an opportunity now. Like, let's say you drop the game to Purdue, you're 5-5, you win those 3 non-conference games, then you're back into the Big Ten schedule when you're at Northwestern. I don't know a lot about Northwestern. I don't know how good they are or how good they're supposed to be. I know they played Wisconsin last night. You know, if you can find a way to maybe sneak that one out, now you're 9-5, and now you're looking at, you know, can you find a way to win, you know, a few more home games in the Big Ten schedule, and then now you're getting to that 13, 14 win range, and you know, 5-6 wins in the Big Ten. And I think if that happens, I think you got to call the season at least a mild success. I mean, when you factor in where the program is, new head coach, trying to sort of build a culture and mold this program into the way he envisions it being. You find a way to get to 13, 14 wins. I think that you don't have to be satisfied with that, but I think you have to at least be all right with that and say, okay, there's something here. Now, can you build on that going forward into 2026, 27, 27, 28, and so forth?
On Fairleigh Dickinson specifically, be careful how you say that. ESPN matchup predictor, for whatever it's worth, gives the Gophers a 97.2% chance to win that game. However, the Chicago State and Green Bay games also had very similar numbers, and they had to grind those out. But to echo what you said, Manny, you win those 3 games against Texas Southern, Campbell, Fairleigh Dickinson. I don't think you can assume them again. I know they just had a nice win, but I don't think you can assume anything with this squad. If you roll back into Big Ten play at 8-5, winning 3 of your next 4, assuming that one loss is to Purdue, yeah, I think you got to feel pretty good about it. I do think losses will stack up. I'm not naive to the limitations and the issues that they may have. But just like I said about beating Wisconsin in football for the 4th time in 5 years, don't ever let it get lost on you that the team went essentially a decade and a half without beating Wisconsin. So you should celebrate those victories. The win against Indiana should absolutely be celebrated. And who knows, maybe it leads to a plucky effort against Purdue, which leads to taking care of business against 3 teams that you should, and you roll back into conference play feeling pretty good about yourself. And if you can end up with 4 to 6 more conference wins, I would agree with you. Look, and if we're saying the same thing 2 years from now, that's a problem. Right. But I think you need to view it in the prism and in the context of where we're at, which is year 1 with a coach who got here late, didn't have much left, had to basically beg and plead his only player to stay, who did. So I guess my big takeaway from the entire night, I'm just happy for Niko Medved. I have no idea where the season's going to go from here. For all we know, Manny, they might only win another conference game or 2. But I'm happy for him to get his first Big Ten win out of the way, get it at home, get it against a top 25 team, which is pretty cool. They had this on the broadcast, Manny. I don't know if you heard it. That is the first Gopher basketball coach to win their first Big Ten conference game since
Jim Molinari.
Jim Molinari, who replaced Dan Munson back in 2005, 2006, whatever year that was.
I think it's 2000. Yeah, it was 2006 because Tubby got hired in 2007.
So good for Niko. That's where I'm at. Good.
Now,
I'm happy for Niko on this Thursday morning.
Now, we all know how that Jim Molinari season went and how that season finished. Wasn't great. But still, nonetheless, you're all right. Congratulations to Niko. That's a pretty big deal. It was an impressive win by against Indiana last night. And I think if anything, if you can take anything from that win, aside from just beating Indiana, I think it's hope that, maybe this team can actually end up being at least a little bit better than what we initially thought. And I think if that's the case, then I think you got to be happy with it. Or if they end up doing exactly what we kind of thought they would at the start of the year, I think that's okay too. And you just have to hope that you can kind of that Niko can kind of build on this and continue to kind of improve the program. And it's one step at a time, and what we saw last night is a step at least in the right direction. That's what you want to see if you're going to try and build a program.
And regardless of how the season goes from here on out, that doesn't take away that it's not fun to beat a top 25 team in the country, especially when you've been struggling out of the gate. So I'm going to celebrate that and use that as another good reason to talk with my buddy about Gophers athletics, because we both enjoy it. So Manny, thank you very much. We're going to talk a lot more throughout the basketball season. Again, as promised, I'm going to mix in some hockey talk. If you're a college football fan, next week in this feed, probably late next week, Daniel House will join me, Manny. Daniel and I are going to do our yearly, which I've taken now to multiple podcasts, preview every college football bowl game and first-round college football playoff matchup, which largely entails me setting up the game and Daniel House saying all the smart stuff. So you can look forward to that next week in this feed as well on YouTube or wherever you are listening to Gophers 101. That is Manny Hill. I am Ross Brendel. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe to Minnesota Sports, Score North, that is. And then also on Apple and Spotify, please like, rate, review, do whatever it is you do. Word of mouth, still good. Spread the word about Gophers 101. That's Manny Hill. I'm Ross Brendel. We'll talk again real soon.